Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And all right, let's be honest. Last week's football game did not go as we had intended, at least as how I intended. But this is the biggest game of the season. Arizona's not going to a bowl game. It's all about ASU. It's about the game that we have been talking about for just about a year since last year's game. For those of you who have listened to the program long enough, I have all but guaranteed a win over ASU. Shane has not done that.
I did predict that last year, right after last year's game, that Arizona would be favored going into this game, and I was right about that. That's as bold as I get.
That's fair enough. Now we have a special show for you guys. We're recording this on Monday, so it's before the Maui Invitational, so we're not talking any men's basketball. Yeah. But we have, at the same time, the voice of the Wildcats, Brian Jeffries, and the voice of the Sun Devils, Tim Healey, on at the same time to preview the game and break down how are both teams' morales going into the game. So we'll find out about that, and really looking forward to having both of them on. Great job by Shane for booking this awesome show. Now, before we get into our buy or sell, he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but every year I do this. So my co-host here has written a couple of books about the U of A ASU rivalry. If there's anyone that knows more about this rivalry than Shane Dale, I don't know if they're living. So you can go to Amazon.com and check out Shane's book, Rich Rod versus Graham. That's the most recent one.
I knew you were going to do this, by the way, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. And the first one is called
Territorial, the History of the Duel in the Desert.
And people can find this Amazon.com, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's check this out if you're watching the video stream.
Where's the other one?
The other one's in my bookshelf, actually.
Okay.
And I don't have either one autographed by you, so I might need to change that when you come with me to the game on Friday. But okay. We are going to get right into it. A lot to break down. Mm-hmm. We're going to try not to keep you here. It's Thanksgiving week. We don't want to keep you guys here all week talking about the game, even though there's a lot to say. So we want to thank, first of all, our friends at Ice Shaker. Check them out at iceshaker.com. Shane is drinking out of his. I'm holding my big jug here. Shane's big jug is in the background. If you're watching on the video stream, go to iceshaker.com.
For those who are listening on the radio, he's talking about the ice shaker when he says a big. I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I'm still 12 years old. I'm sorry.
Go to iceshaker.com. Use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C. Get $5 off. Plus, they have some great other specials for Black Friday. So check that out. Iceshaker.com. All right, Shane. Number one, in buy or sell, there's not much of a reason to be disappointed about what we saw on Saturday. It is what it is.
Well, I'll buy that it's disappointed it didn't put up better effort. I'm not surprised by the result. Not at all. I think that it's a combination of several things. First of all, let's start with the fact that Washington State's a good team with a very good defense.
Yeah.
And we saw that.
They were very good, yes.
Legitimately good defense. They got a lot of pressure on Jaden DeLaura. Obviously having missing Jordan Morgan doesn't help. No. I think they went away from the run game a little too soon. But beyond that, I think Jaden DeLaura was a little too jacked up for this game. I think he kind of went to screw it mode late in the game and made some throws he otherwise would have made. He got into it with Dorian Singer on the sideline. I think they made up and Singer had
but it was
day anyway. So it wasn't. Yeah. But I think it's fine. But it's a rare situation where a guy is more amped up for the game before the Territorial Cup game. But I think that's maybe in a way that's a good thing. Jaden DeLaura sort of got that out of the system. And now, this is a big game too, obviously, but certainly him as of this moment, as of this recording, that game was more personal to Jaden DeLaura. After Friday, that might change, but all things considered, DeLaura struggled. That wasn't a shock to me. He's much better than what he showed on Saturday. Obviously, a lot of freshmen on this team. I think it's easy for complacency to settle in and think that you finally arrive after beating a ranked team on the road. And Washington State's a very good team. So all those things considered, it goes disappointed. Disappointed it wasn't a better game, but not surprised by the outcome.
All right, I'm going to sell this. Yeah, I am disappointed. I picked him to win. I rode the momentum probably a little too hard. I was disappointed with what I saw. Not necessarily from the defense, who they gave up a touchdown on the first possession. Second possession, Washington State was going down the field. They forced a fumble. The offense was brutal. I mean, it was like they were basking in their glory against UCLA and just, didn't show up.
Well, the defense essentially gave up 24 points because there was the pick six. And even with that, I mean, Washington scored off turnovers. There was the turnover on downs. By the way, I know Jedd Fisch is an aggressive guy. The first fourth down they went for on 4th and 2 when they were in field goal range, I didn't mind because that's kind of iffy field goal range for Tyler Loop. The second one, when it was 4th and 4 from the 40, Arizona's defense had settled in, played very well. I think they got 3 straight tackles for loss on the previous possession. Punt the ball in that situation. So I think that he got a little too aggressive. Of course, if they converted, it's fine. But there were a lot of things that I think went wrong. I think Jedd Fisch, I think he's called good games most of the season. I think he's had a good balance in terms of run versus pass. I think this may have been his weakest game of the season in terms of some of the decisions that he made.
Yeah, it wasn't great. And I think he kind of panicked a little bit after seeing that his offense just wasn't working. He tried to get it going. There were a couple calls in the game, and I don't want to. Every week we talk about Pac-12 refs. They are what they are.
You're talking about that fumble.
Yeah,
and looked like it went out of the end zone, maybe.
Yeah, I thought some of the spotting too was not great.
I agree,
but I'm not going to blame the. Washington State was just a better team.
Yep,
quite simply, they were just the better team. I don't want to dwell on it because we have a game to focus on this weekend, but it was not a great performance. And yes, I am disappointed. So I'm going to sell that. I'm sorry, but people don't want to hear that.
It should have been a more competitive game. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. The score was a lot closer. 31-20 is a lot closer than the game itself. Okay. Right. Bonus question. I'm going to ask one early, Shane. Arizona has a daytime game crowd problem. Now, I like to post the picture. If you follow me on Twitter, you will see that I like to post a picture of the stadium half an hour before the game, whatnot. It was like relatively empty. It was brutal. If there were 25,000 people there that I saw on Saturday, maybe 30,000 people, it'd be a shock. All right, does Arizona have a daytime crowd problem, in your opinion?
They have a crowd problem, period. Yeah, I'll buy it. I know they showed up pretty well for Oregon and for USC, but I think those are what I've taken away, Eric, is I think the crowd is showing up for the big name schools more so than the team right now. I think that apathy for the football program has reached levels where it's going to take a while to rebuild. It's like a big ship and you just can't turn it on a dime. I think that it's going to take time to rebuild, and just one win over a ranked team on the road. While it was a big win for the program and for rebuilding and for recruitment and all that, the fans kind of, maybe they enjoyed watching on TV, but they sort of shrugged and like, no, we'll go to the ASU game. Hopefully. I think the ASU game will be a different story. I think it'll be close to sold out, if not sold out. But yeah, they have a problem just in terms of fans not being emotionally invested in the program because they've been bad for so long, and it's going to take a little while for them to turn it around. With that said, I think that's one reason among many that this game against ASU is going to be as big as it is, because I think the difference between losing this game and winning this game, finishing with 5 wins, including the win over your rival for the first time in 6 years, could be the difference in a few thousand season tickets. I think it could be that big. So in that way, in terms of, bowl, there's no bowl game on the line. In terms of standings, doesn't really matter, but in terms of fan apathy or lack thereof and getting fans engaged, I think a win over ASU is going to go a long way. But a long-winded way to answer your question, yes, I think they have an attendance problem. I don't know if it's exclusive to daytime more so than it is against the level or the opponent and the interest in watching that opponent.
Very disappointed, one way or the other. I'm disappointed in Arizona's fans. It was a beautiful day out there in Tucson, and I'm not calling anybody out specifically, but this was a game that should have been more attended than it was. It wasn't like an 8:30 p.m. start; it was a noon start. The students, especially, that was a real debacle.
I saw that on TV. It's like on the kickoff because you see really the whole that whole side of the stadium on the kickoff. Like, where the hell are they?
The fans were the adult fans were way better than the students. The students should be embarrassed with themselves. I'm not going to go much further than that, but it was disappointing at best. Yeah. How about that? Yeah. Okay. Number 2, Shane, my biggest takeaway from Saturday is that I was wrong about Jordan Morgan's absence not meaning as much with only 2 games left. Buy or sell that I was wrong. Jordan Morgan's absence made a huge difference on Saturday.
I'll sell that it was the reason they lost the game. I think that they would have lost either way. I think it was a number of factors, most of which I already mentioned: getting away from the run game too soon, being a little too aggressive on 4th down, Jayden de Laura making some bad decisions. I think that had, and de Laura, he gets forced into making some bad decisions when he's facing more pressure. And that's a loss for sure. I don't know if the outcome would have been different. I don't know if the margin would have been much different if Jordan Morgan hadn't played. That's not to say they don't miss him. That's not to say they won't miss him against ASU. And we'll ask Tim Healey about ASU's defense and could they cause problems for Jayden de Laura and the offense. But I think it had to do with a number of factors. Missing Morgan and his leadership out there was probably one of them. But I can't imagine this game would have gone differently had Morgan been healthy and played.
I think it would have. I think it made a big difference, actually, Shane. I thought Arizona's offensive line got destroyed early in the game, and I think that set the tone. Now, I'm not saying it changed the outcome of the game, but I think that Morgan's loss was a significant factor early on. And I was thinking as I'm watching that, like, oh man, that was a bad take by me last week. This guy was a potential NFL player who's not there, and now Arizona's just getting whooped on the defense or on the offensive line by Washington State's defensive line. I mean, de Laura had little time to throw. The running lanes weren't there right away. I mean, the Wildcats just didn't figure it out until late in the second half. So yeah, I think it made a huge difference.
Yeah, but I think, again, and not to beat a dead horse, but I think they ran the ball well. Wiley and I think it was Coleman combined for about like 96 yards on 12 touches or something, 12 carries, something like that.
Yeah, okay, fine.
I mean, they had the one big 25-yard run, but even with that, I remember there was one possession where Arizona had, it might have been the first possession of the second half. Wiley runs for 7 yards on first down, and then de Laura goes back to throw on second down. I'm not saying you have to run it again on second down, but it worked. Maybe, especially when you see de Laura struggling, keep running the ball if that's working, and let your quarterback settle in a little bit and take some pressure off of him. And I feel like that was one of several examples where Arizona got away from the run too soon.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good point. It was disappointing, and my take last week was also bad. All right, Shane, number 3, we're just going to keep this one simple. Beat ASU equals a successful season. Lose to ASU, not so much. Buy or sell?
I hate to make it so simple, but I have to buy it. I think that, look, the program's going in the right direction regardless of what happens Friday. I think that's important to note. They are much better than they were last year. 4 wins, a win over a ranked team on the road, 2 quality road wins, beating North Dakota State. I know they're FCS, but that was a good win.
Yep.
And they've got another decent recruiting class coming in. No doubt they'll add more transfers. They got so many young players that are only going to be better, a lot of returners next year. So but if you're talking about the season as a whole, like the direction of the program, I would sell it. But the season, reluctantly, I would have to buy it just because they lost some games that they probably could have won. And then if you lose to ASU for a 6th straight time, after some of the brutal losses that have come during that stretch, all the way from blowing a 19-point lead in the second half to losing by 63 points, they've run the spectrum of ways to lose to ASU during this streak. So I think it would mean that much more to end that streak, kind of like in 2008. When ASU had beaten Arizona 3 times in a row, and Arizona was looking to end that streak and get to a bowl game for the first time in a decade. Obviously, that's not on the table on Friday, but I think it just released a lot of frustration, and it set the tone for the next several years in the Mike Stoops era, which were successful for the most part. And I think that could help facilitate things, or maybe even speed up the process of getting to that next level for Arizona and for Jedd Fisch if they beat ASU.
Okay. Coming from somebody that has said that Arizona is going to win this game for the better part of the last year, I'm going to sell this one. We wanted 4 wins. We got 4 wins.
Yeah.
They beat the number 12 team at the time on the road. That is,
and they beat them. And they beat them. I'm sorry, they beat them by twice as much as USC did. I just want to throw that out there.
Fair. Okay. So yes, I mean it was a good win. With that said, a loss to ASU derails it. Doesn't mean it was a not successful season, but it wasn't as successful as it could have been. Yeah. If you beat ASU, though, it is a successful season.
Yes.
I mean, no doubt. 5 wins with a win over ASU. We're not complaining. We're like, okay, things are going in the right direction. Yep. Next year, you make a bowl game. Schedule's tougher. You make a bowl game next year. Real simple. Yep. You find a way to get to 6 wins and you continue that improvement. So I'm going to kind of sell this one, but maybe a little buying that, yeah, if you beat ASU, successful. You lose to ASU, not necessarily unsuccessful, but like it's not what we wanted. Okay.
I agree with you. I agree.
Okay. Bonus question number 2. If Jedd Fisch has a chance and Arizona is up by a couple scores in the 4th quarter, Sean Aguano is an interim head coach. does that influence, and this is not necessarily a buy or sell, but should Jedd Fisch run up the score if he can, based on the fact that ASU did in 2020 and based on the fact that, Arizona's kind of due for a win? Or are you, hey, this is a rivalry, you don't want to set this precedent, going forward?
Nah, he should run it up. And usually I wouldn't say that, but I buy that he should run it up. I don't know that was a buy or sell question, but I'm going to buy anyway that he should run up the score if he has a chance. Number one, I remember last year he mentioned ASU running up the score 2 years ago, even though he wasn't there. He pointed it out during a press conference, so he took note of that. Now that kind of thing can bite you in the butt later on, but I think going back to what I said, Eric, about wanting to get fans reinvested in the program, running up the score on ASU, taking it to them. They have no pity. They have no pity for the kitty. Arizona has no sympathy for the devil. Run up the score as much as you can. I think fans would love it. Maybe there's repercussions later in later years, but there's gonna be plenty of motivation anyway to win that game. So I'm not saying throw it on every play if you're up by 2 or 3 scores in the fourth quarter, but maybe you mix in a little, a deep throw to T-Mac in there or something like that. Now, it would be a great position to be in. First of all, I would love to be in that situation.
You're right.
And I actually think Jedd might do it. I think he might do it in a way where he's like, oh, I'm just trying to move the football, whatever.
Well, remember, Arizona was up by 3 scores in the fourth quarter against ASU a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The last time that fans were able to see an Arizona ASU game, thank God,
right,
in Arizona Stadium was 2018.
Yeah, 4 years since they've had a real home game against ASU.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to think that we haven't seen a win since before the Cubs won the World Series, or right after the Cubs won the World Series in 2016.
It's been that long. The Cubs won the World Series and Donald Trump was elected president within 1 week. And then a couple of weeks later, Arizona beat ASU.
Yeah, right.
That's how long it's been.
You're right.
So I think if you're talking about running up the score, I'm not talking about like throwing the ball when you're up 2 touchdowns with 10 minutes left. I'm talking about like with 2 minutes left, when you could just take a knee, or like ASU maybe has 1 timeout, they could get the ball back with 30 seconds left and you throw a deep bomb. You get that opportunity, I'm all for it. I think it would energize the fan base, and on a personal level, I'd love to see it.
I am too. All right, I'm all about run it up, and I think everybody listening, I would be surprised.
I'm generally not, but in this case, I am.
Yeah. In general, I agree with you. This is a time where these guys deserve it. Run it up. Okay, you and I have talked about the 2008, Shane. This is not a buy or sell question either, but just thought I'd mention it. 2008, one of our favorite Arizona ASU games, in that the Wildcats kind of got to a bowl game, and they were down 10-7 at halftime, outscored ASU 24-0 in the second half, got to the bowl game 131-10. Is there another ASU U of A game that's one of your favorites that stands out to you just during your Arizona tenure?
Oh, there's several. Yeah, there's several, but I think easy answer is 2014. I was in the press box for that one, so I didn't get to cheer, but I was, silently fist bumping and all that. It was a great game. Both teams were ranked for the first time since '86 when they played each other, and it hasn't happened again since, and might not happen again for a while. And it was a close game. There are a lot of big plays. Scooby's strip sack and the opening possession for ASU. And fans rushing the field, finding out at halftime, oh, this game is for the Pac-12 South. So much on the line, and we don't have to talk about how the rest of the season went, but I think if it was like a movie, it would end right there at the end of that game. Right. So I'd have to throw that one up there. And then the 2009 game was not a good game. Nick Foles was playing hurt. Arizona had some injuries. ASU was terrible. ASU made a late comeback, but then, Kyle Williams for ASU muffed that punt. Alex Indejas the year before the blocked PATs made the game-winning field goal. If you go back and watch the end of that game, we have it on whatever
VHS.
I don't know, VHS or we still have TiVo or whatever it was. You'll see me in the stands there with my arms raised as that kick goes through with my with my friend who's an ASU alum with his hands on his hips. So that was a good memory just for that, even though it was a stressful game and it wasn't a particularly good game.
I'm going to bring back one. 2014 obviously is one that stands out. I think 2008, 14, and 16 over the last 20 years are Arizona games that are games that Arizona fans are going to remember. Another one that stands out to me is 2004, and I've been thinking about that game a lot thus far this week.
Oh yeah.
Arizona was 2-8 heading into that game. It was Mike Stoops' first year.
Yep.
and ASU was a significantly better team. They had won the last two meetings. I actually, for the student radio station camp, I called the 03 game in the Sun Devil Stadium press box. And
I was in the press box there too. We were there at the same time.
Yeah. And we got whooped that one. That was a bad one. Arizona only scored one touchdown in that game. 02 was a bad one where they got smoked. 04 was when the rivalry, it was my senior year. And Richard Kovalchuk was the Arizona quarterback.
That's right.
Final score, Arizona 34, Arizona State 27. Probably the last time I rushed the field, or one of the last times that I rushed the field. It was one that I won't ever forget. And it was like, hey, Stoops has us going in the right direction after these years of garbage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And ASU was a ranked team as well.
Right. This is one where I'm just thinking, this year, not necessarily the same. Jedd's second year, Jedd's first rivalry game at home.
Yep.
Trying to turn things in the right direction. Now, this Arizona team is better than that one was.
Yeah.
But that one just sticks in my mind, and I will give some further sentiments on that later in the program.
You know what's been I've been thinking about the last few days since we knew this game was coming up, and since the Washington State game is in the rearview mirror. So many of the players I talked to, whether it was in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s, whatever decade they played in this rivalry, all the way up till now, one of the things that so many of them said that hasn't changed over the years is, I didn't know just how personal this rivalry was until I stepped on the field for that first game.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it was on the visitors field. So I think that a lot of the players, they're learning about it. Now, Sean Aguano, I guess, had he's got the Arizona fight song in the locker room, like Todd Graham used to do, and is educating his players. I'm sure Jedd Fisch is doing the same. But it's one thing to learn about it. It's another thing to experience it.
Yeah. And
a lot of these players, ASU and U of A, both have a lot of new players who haven't played in this game before. And they're about to realize just how intense this is. I think it's going to throw a lot of them off. We could potentially see some sloppy football early in this game for that reason. But it's just interesting that hasn't changed. Guys I talked to before ASU was even ASU said the same thing, as I didn't know just how nasty this rivalry was until I stepped on the field for that first game.
We've recorded, I think, 130-ish of these episodes. And in the past, we've had a lot of former players on who've discussed their ASU moments, their favorite ASU moments. If you have a chance, go take a listen back. Some of maybe in the 2020, early 2021 episodes. Take a listen to those if you have some extra time this week and really want to get fired up before the game. Heath Bray was one that was a pretty good one. We've gotten some stories
before 2020. We had it was before that awful game, but we had Rich Rod and Scooby on the same time talking about.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, talk about the 2014 game. So speaking of guys that have called a lot of Arizona State games, Brian Jeffries, who all of you know is the voice of the Wildcats on radio, and Healey, who's the voice of the Sun Devils, are going to join us next and share some of their thoughts on this year's teams and some memories from the past here on Wildcat Country. Scooby, we sent you an ice shaker. They are a sponsor, courtesy of our buddy Chris Gronkowski. You have it right there.
I love my ice shaker. Fun fact: when I trained with Glenn Gronkowski, everybody, when we were trained together, people thought I was the other Gronk brother, so it's kind of funny. But yes, I love my ice shaker. It is very good. I use it every day. I am a veteran to the ice shaker game, by the way.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here. Use coupon code Wildcat Country at iceshaker.com.
All right, Shane, this is the first intro I think I've ever been nervous doing on the show, because we have two legends joining us at the same time. The voice of the Wildcats, Brian Jeffries, and the voice of the Sun Devils, Tim Healey. We are very glad to have both of them on Wildcat Country. Brian, I'm going to start with you. You're in Maui. We're getting ready to call 3 hopefully victorious games Monday through Wednesday. My first question to you, what you saw from Arizona on Saturday in Tucson against Washington State, does that performance concern you as far as a hangover effect heading into the Territorial Cup? Or do you think, hey, it's a new week, this team's lost 5 in a row to ASU, it's time to start over, not concerned about that at all?
Well, I think this team has been kind of up and down this season, Eric, and they've been on a bit of a roller coaster in terms of wins and losses. And so they have come back from losses and, won 4 games this year. They haven't been able to win 2 in a row. I think that's kind of the one, part that they're trying to fix, and they won't be able to do that this year. But based on the history we've seen now through 11 games, I don't think it's going to be a hangover. And if nothing else, it might be a little bit of a motivation. That was kind of the way it looked going into the UCLA game the week prior in Pasadena, where Arizona was coming off a performance that was certainly not their best, in particular on the offensive side. And then they came out and played really well. And it is the Territorial Cup. And even if some of these guys have never played in it before, they know what it's all about. And so I think you're going to probably get the best from both sides.
Yeah, Brian, Tim, like Eric said, thanks so much for taking time to join us and know how busy you are. Brian, follow up for you regarding Jayden de Laura. May have been a little too amped up for that Washington State game. We know how personal that was for him. But every time he's had a bad game this year, he's come back with a good one. Do you expect the same thing from him against ASU?
Yeah, I'll go back again to that week before, where going into the UCLA game, he was coming off a bad game. And I asked Jedd Fisch that week, I said, is his mental makeup the type that he relishes the idea of almost bouncing back? And just said, yeah, absolutely. And I think that was on Thursday of that week. And so Jedd had said he practiced exceptionally well, really felt confident that he was going to play well, and he did. And now coming off a poor performance with 4 interceptions, yeah, you expect him to bounce back. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's not guaranteed by any means. But that seems to be the type of personality and the way he's made up. And the question for him now going into next season is he's got to find some consistency so he doesn't come off these bad games and then a good game and then a bad game, et cetera.
Tim, like Arizona, ASU has a lot of new faces this year, and a lot of ups and downs like Arizona as well. Both teams coming off some tough losses on Saturday, but they do have a lot of in-state talent. Sean Aguano obviously knows this rivalry very well. Trenton Borgay, their quarterback, is from the Tucson area. And I listened to Sean Aguano's press conference on Monday, and he talked about he does a lot of the same things that Todd Graham did, as far as play the Arizona fight song in the locker room and bring former players back to talk about the rivalry. Number one, how much do you think Sean Aguano gets this rivalry? And number two, how much do you think that matters going into this game?
Well, he does get this rivalry. I think when he was promoted to interim head coach, it energized a lot of the fans in our fan base, because I think there are quite a few people in Sun Devil Nation who are excited, to have a long-time, highly successful Arizona high school coach be the head coach at Arizona State. Sean won 4 state championships in his 8 years at Chandler High School and sent a lot of his players on to major colleges, including guys like Chase Lucas and N'Keal Harry, who started at Arizona State. He gets this rivalry for sure. And in fact, today he mentioned at the press conference that he had the video people put together about a 6 or 7 minute reel, a movie or film that he showed to the team before they practiced today. They normally don't practice Mondays, but they did today because of the short week. And it was a film that just kind of pretty much documented the history of the Territorial Cup and the history of this rivalry, because a lot of the guys, as you said, are newcomers. There are a lot of D1 transfers from other schools, freshmen, guys who came from elsewhere that don't realize what this rivalry is all about. And hopefully after viewing that film, they get a better handle on it. And then they have guys like you mentioned, Trenton Borgay, but the guy I go to is Kyle Soley. He is, pun intended, he is the heart and soul of this team, and a terrific player, the leading tackler all season long in the Pac-12 conference. And this will be his final game at Arizona State. He's not going to get a chance to go to a bowl game. He's a lifelong Sun Devil fan from Scottsdale. Trust me, if there's anybody in this game on either side that gets this rivalry, it's Kyle Soley. And so as far as whether it'll make a difference, we'll find out on Friday. But I think Coach Aguano gets it. I think Kyle gets it. And it's really the last source of motivation for this team. It's been a hugely disappointing year on so many levels for Arizona State with a coaching change early in the season. And, as Sean said 2 weeks ago, the sources of motivation left when they lost 2 weeks ago at Washington State that eliminated them from being able to go to a bowl game. So the motivation last Saturday was to try to send the seniors out on a winning note in their final home game. Well, that didn't work. But now the main motivation is the rivalry game. And that's the only motivation these guys should need, because anyone who's ever been a part of this game knows how special it is on both sides. And I think if the Sun Devils lose on Friday, it won't be because they weren't ready to play.
Tim, kind of Shane and I have kind of basked in this this year, in that, we've had these disappointing years for U of A for the last, 3 or 4 years. And now ASU's kind of going through a similar thing. How would you describe just the wave of morale that you've seen from this team, where they started out, they kicked the, out of NAU. And then after that, things kind of hit a roadblock in Stillwater. Then the Eastern Michigan thing happened. Herm left. Just kind of, how would you describe the roller coaster that has been 2022?
Yeah, well, they did have a dominant first game against Northern Arizona. They played competitively at Oklahoma State. That was a 3-0 game late in the second quarter in Stillwater before the Cowboys got going. And even once they got going, Arizona State competed in that game. I think it was 34-17, but it was 20-17 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. But the Eastern Michigan game was the turning point to see them get steamrolled in the running game. In fact, the comparison a lot of people drew to that game against Eastern Michigan was ASU's last loss in the rivalry game in 2016 at Arizona, when the U of A didn't have to throw a pass in the second half because they were just running the ball right down the Sun Devils' throats. Eastern Michigan rushed for over 300 yards in that game. And, they haven't exactly been a juggernaut in the MAC since then. So, and then of course, the next day came Herm's departure, mutual parting of the ways is the way it was phrased. And Sean Aguano's elevation to head coach. And then incrementally, the team played a little bit better each week. But he had a juggernaut to go through right away. Right off the bat, his first 3 games are against nationally ranked Pac-12 opponents: Utah, USC, Washington. They were, Utah's a really good team and beat them 34-13. They played hard, but they got beat by a much better team. At USC, they played a terrific first half, scored on all 3 of their possessions. I think it was 20-17 at halftime before the Trojans got it rolling in the third quarter. And then the third week, they come out and they knock off Washington, which has had a terrific season under Kalen DeBoer, and with their, quarterback transfer from Indiana, Michael Penix. Penix threw for over 300 yards that game, but Trenton Bourguet came off the bench and threw for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then after that came a bye week. And then a disappointing loss to Stanford, where I forget I don't remember what the stat is, but I can't remember the last time that Arizona State played a football game where their opponent didn't score a touchdown and they lost. Stanford kicked 5 field goals, won 15-14. And then Emory Jones quarterbacked that game. He was healthy again. And then the following week, the decision was made to put Trenton Bourguet in the starting lineup against Colorado, and he goes out and throws for 435 yards, and they beat Colorado. Then a 50-36 loss to a really good UCLA team at home. And since then, it's just been kind of downhill. They fell behind 28-0 at Washington State, rallied in the second half. And I thought they were going to, I just had a good feeling going to the Oregon State game last week that they were going to play well, and they didn't. And it's just been a really, really difficult season. The defense has just been really disappointing. I thought the defense was going to be the strength of this team, and they're not very good defensively, particularly up front. And I thought that was going to be the strength of their defense, was the defensive line. And they haven't done a good job. Their secondary is pretty good. I'm curious to watch the matchup of ASU's secondary against U of A's receivers on Friday, because I think that'll be a good matchup. Our secondary, even despite missing some players, they've played pretty well, but the defensive front has just not been able to remain stout against the run or inflict a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So the best player on our team this year really has been our running back, X Valladay. the
He's been
running
great.
back from Wyoming. He's second leading rusher in the Pac-12. He's a great kid. In fact, he only played here 1 year. And yet when he was introduced on Senior Day Saturday, I happened to have my binoculars on down the field as he was introduced. He goes, the kids go out, they go by the Tillman statue and then, meet with Coach Iguano and then head out to greet their teammates. And you could see that X was emotional, getting teared up, and he shared a very lengthy embrace with Coach Iguano. He is a terrific kid, and he's been a really good runner. He is the leading career rusher in the entire football bowl subdivision.
Wow.
I mean, he's a very underrated running back. He has been all year. He's rushed for nearly 5,000 yards in his career. And he's been their best player week in and week out over the course of the season.
No doubt. He's been excellent. And let's hope Arizona can find a way defensively to slow him down. Now, Brian, it's been a roller coaster at best for our Wildcats over the last few years. They didn't win a game. They lost 20 in a row. You're calling games up in the booth way high at Arizona Stadium. Do you feel the enthusiasm from Jedd Fisch that he has brought to this program? Basically, is it easier to call games these days than it was under, in the late Kevin Sumlin era or, maybe early in Jedd's tenure, such as the NAU game?
Well, certainly, Sumlin's last season, they went 0-5 during the COVID year, and that was miserable. And last year they go 1-11, and really they were competitive in 10 of their 12 games, at least for the first half, but they just didn't have the personnel and the depth to keep it going in the second half. Jedd has incredible enthusiasm and energy, and so he has kind of ignited the community and I think the program. And last year, the thing that stood out to me was the fact that even though they lost 11 of 12 games, every week they would go to practice almost with the attitude like they just come off a win and that they practiced hard every week. And I give them a lot of credit for that. And they've carried that over to this season. And they're probably, to be honest with you, ahead of schedule, because nobody really knew what this team had going into this year. They went to the transfer portal. They had an excellent recruiting group coming in, but with all those new pieces, you didn't know how it was going to fall together. And so I think Jedd has done a tremendous job in terms of just orchestrating what he calls the build. And he's made no secret of the fact that they've got a ways to go before they're going to be contending for any kind of championships. And so he kind of set the bar a little lower this year that we just need to build. And when they won their opener at San Diego State, that got everybody's attention. And, they've won 4 games now, which is probably more than some people thought they could this season. So if they finish 5-7, if they beat Arizona State on Friday and they're 5-7, I tell you what, he's going to get some votes for Coach of the Year because and able to do what he's been able to do based on the circumstances of the last few seasons. I think it's been remarkable. Now they've got to keep it up. Now they've got to be able to recruit. They're going to hit the transfer portal again. They rebuilt their offense this season, and Jedd has said now next we've got to rebuild our defense because that's been the weak part of this year's team. And if they can do the same build next year with the defense that they did this year with the offense, and most of those offensive players are going to be back next year, then they'll be poised to make that next step. And what that is, I don't know, but I like the direction, and I think everybody's excited about the direction that Jedd has the program headed.
Brian, Shane and I discussed this earlier in the show. If Arizona were to lose this game against ASU, is the season somewhat of a disappointment?
Well, it would be, I wouldn't say the season would be a disappointment. It would be a disappointment to lose again to Arizona State. And I think that the fans here are tired of it, and the players should be tired of it. Doesn't mean they're going to go out and win on Friday. But I think there seems to be a mutual understanding that this is a game that they really want to win for, the sake of the rivalry, for the sake of, getting the Cup back for another year, to end the losing streak to ASU. If they finish 4-8 this year, again, in the big picture, people are going to say, okay, they're headed in the right direction. They've gone from 0-5 to 1-11 to 4-8. I mean, that's the way you want to go. You want to be going up. You don't want to be going down. If they're 5-7, then yeah, it's a very satisfying season, and it gives them a great springboard into next year.
Brian, similar to what I asked Tim, how much does Jedd Fisch get this rivalry? Because my opinion was that I feel like he grasps it. He makes a big deal out of it, like Sean Iguano has, like Todd Graham did at ASU. I think he did last year too. It just didn't matter because ASU or Arizona rather just didn't have the guys. But do you think he really emphasizes this rivalry as much as some like guys like Dick Tomey and Larry Smith did? And how big a deal do you think it is on game day?
Yeah, it's interesting when you go back and, from Larry Smith to Dick Tomey, John Makovic, Mike Stoops, Rich Rodriguez, etc. All of them have had different ways of looking at this rivalry. If there's one thing in common, they don't want to make it out to be the only game of the season. I mean, right. They want to look at it as a 12-game season, and they want to be successful. In Jedd's case, there are 3 goals up in their team room that haven't changed, and it's win your home field. Number 2 is go to a bowl game. Number 3 is win the Territorial Cup. Those are their 3 goals. Okay. Well, they're not going to win their home field unless they can win this one. They can leave with a home victory. They're not going to a bowl game. That ended last week with a loss to Washington State. So the 3rd goal is still intact. And I think it's important. Jedd has, I know, made mention this week that, really this is their bowl game, and this is a separate season. He's put it that way, that, okay, we played 11 games. That's one season. Now we've got another one. And I think that's just his way of looking at it. Every coach has a different way. And I think when you get into a rivalry game, probably it's the same across the country, that you almost have to separate the rest of the season, because this one, means so much to the fan base. And some years it may mean getting to a bowl or winning a championship. Other years like this season, it's just going to mean pride for both sides.
Yeah, Brian, let me ask you about the defense. So you already touched on it. Jedd Fisch said he thinks the defense has played its best 10 quarters of football, the last 10 quarters of the season. Certainly they've looked better, not an elite unit, but why do you think that the defense has been a bit better these last couple of games? And can you maybe mention a couple of guys that are going to be difference makers potentially against ASU?
Well, I think part of the progress has been that they've played a lot of young guys. And as the season goes on, they've kind of inserted more freshmen into the defensive lineup, and it's just a matter of them learning how to play the game. I mean, they are freshmen, first-year freshmen, and so it's tough. You're playing in the Pac-12. You're playing against some of the best offenses and the best quarterbacks in the country, and it just takes some time. And so, UCLA was a big jump up for the defense. They did a great job against DTR. They kept him in the pocket. And Arizona won the game, and the offense did its part, but really the defense, I think, was the difference in that game. And now this last week against Washington State, Arizona lost. It wasn't because of the defense; it was the offense sputtered. The defense played probably as well as they could have played, but Washington State, because the turnovers, had shorter field, and they went on to the win. Jacob Manu, freshman linebacker, has been probably the biggest addition that has moved, guy that's moved into the starting lineup. He has made, he had 10 tackles at UCLA. He has been, for a young guy, just a tremendous, boost, because that was the one area. Jerry Roberts is their leading tackler, and he was the one returning linebacker that you kind of looked at and said, okay, you're okay there. The other 2 spots were total mysteries when the season started, and they really haven't found a lot of consistency there until Jacob kind of stepped up now. And so that gives them another guy in the middle that's really helped out. For Arizona, the front 4, again, has not, I think, played as well as they had hoped, at least on a consistent basis. Hunter Echols, a transfer from USC, has been very good. Jalen Harris is a 6th-year senior. So the 2 ends, I think, have been pretty good. They've lacked consistency this year. Really, you could look at all 11 positions and say, okay, other than Roberts, have we found guys that can put 2 games together back to back? Now they have. Their last 2 they have. And so I'll give you another name. Gunnar Maldonado, who was a starter earlier, lost that spot to DJ Warnell, and now he's been back the last couple of weeks as a starter, has played a lot better the last 2 weeks. So we'll see. I think if Arizona's going to win this game, that defense has to play as well as it has the last 2 weeks.
Last question, and it's for Mr. Healey. Tell us a little bit more about Trenton Bourguet. We actually had his brother Trayson on the show a couple of years ago when he was committed to U of A under Kevin Sumlin, but obviously the Bourguets know this rivalry well. He's done a better job, I would say, overall than Emory Jones did earlier in the season. Just what has made him special for ASU, and how could he guide ASU to a win on Friday?
Well, Trenton has been an excellent game manager. He is he's a really bright kid. I think he wants to be a coach someday. Probably will be a coach. someday, and doesn't have the strongest of arms, and he's not terribly big. He's listed at 5'11", but he just has a knack of knowing where the ball needs to go and an ability to get the ball there. He throws his receivers open very often. And it was just compelling to see him come off the bench on October 8th against Washington when Emory got hurt. And immediately, I think his first play from scrimmage, he took a snap, handed the ball to Valade, and X ran 11 yards for a touchdown. And then the offense really got cranking as soon as as Bourguet was in there on the next few series. And next thing you know, he's thrown for 183 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then followed that up. The best way to put it is that in his first 2.5 games, the game coming off the bench against Washington and his first 2 starts against Colorado and UCLA, Trenton threw for nearly 1,000 yards. So he's delivered results. Clearly, if you compare Emory Jones to Trenton Bourguet in terms of the measurables, the athleticism, and so forth, Emory wins out in the measurables. But the way I've looked at it is that Emory Jones' athleticism has not been as big an asset at the quarterback position this year as has Trenton Bourguet's knowledge and his game management skills. Because a year ago, Emory Jones was Florida's leading rusher on the season. He ran for over 750 yards for Florida last year. But he just has not been an effective runner this year, despite his athleticism. And yet, when Bourguet, and he's an erratic passer. He's about a 50-50 passer in terms of, his completion percentage is better than that. It's somewhere in the 60% range, but he's not a real consistent deliverer of the football. Whereas Bourguet doesn't have the arm strength Emory does. Emory can throw it a mile. One of the best passes of the year, he threw a 49-yard touchdown pass to Elijah Badger at Stanford and just laid the ball right into Badger's breadbasket as he was crossing the goal line. But Bourguet just has a skill of delivering the ball where it needs to go and hitting his receivers and throwing them open, as my partner Jeff Van Raphorst would say. And he's been a great story. It's been a down year for the program, but Trenton Bourguet has been a really, really good story. And he's had a rough couple of games the last couple of weeks. He got knocked out of the Washington State game in Pullman in the first quarter, took a hellacious hit on a sack where he fumbled the ball backwards almost to the end zone. And last week against Oregon State, he was 20 of 32, but he only averaged 6 yards per completion. His 20 completions were good for just 122 yards as the Devils couldn't get anything going deep. And, he doesn't have a really super strong arm, but even the intermediate passing game wasn't very effective. They ran the ball well against Oregon State, and I'm surprised they didn't run it more. And that's one area where I think they can exploit Arizona, because Arizona has one of the worst, statistically speaking, run defenses in the Pac-12.
Yeah,
and
in the country. Tim. Yeah,
and Arizona State with not only Valade, but they have a good second back, Daniel Ngata, that I'm surprised he hasn't gotten more touches this year, because he's been really effective when he has carried the football. That's one area where I think they might be able to have some success. The other area where the Sun Devils have actually, it's been a pleasant surprise, I guess you could say, besides Bourguet, is for 2 or 3 years now, ever since Brandon Ayuk, first N'Keal Harry and then Brandon Ayuk left to go to the National Football League, people at ASU have been wondering who's going to be the next go-to receiver. And for 2 years, really nobody emerged in the wide receiver group. And that's one of the reasons why I thought Jaden Daniels' passing numbers declined his last 2 years at Arizona State. But this year, Elijah Badger has emerged into not only a go-to receiver, but one of the best receivers in the Pac-12. But Trenton Bourguet has been one of the better stories of the season, being the local kid and now, from Marana High School. And he was very accomplished and put up some great numbers down there.
He was.
And so, really from that perspective, maybe we shouldn't be surprised. That's the thing that struck me when he got going in his first game or two coming in and taking over at quarterback is that all the media and all the fans and people who care about Arizona State football were very surprised, at this walk-on kid, this one-time walk-on delivering at quarterback. But everybody inside the locker room, they didn't seem so surprised because they've seen this in practices for 3 years.
Last quick question for both of you. I'm going to start with Tim here, just because it's going to bring up bad memories. Just a couple minutes left. Your favorite game that you've called among all the Territorial Cup games that you have broadcast is, Tim?
Well, it'd have to be a tie. The 2010 game won by Arizona State in 2 overtimes on the 2 blocked extra points by James Brooks. One that forced overtime and the other that won the game in the second overtime. It would be higher on my list if it wasn't the final game of a mediocre 6-6 season for ASU. But it was a remarkable football game, just the way it ended. I mean, you seldom see an extra point blocked, let alone 2 blocked, let alone both of them being it wasn't an extra point blocked early in the game, and it ended up being a 1-point game.
Nauseating. I remember it well.
Yep. These were the plays that decided the game. And then in 2018, the rally from 19 points down in the fourth quarter to win 41-40 in Herm Edwards' first Territorial Cup game was pretty special. I mean, you're down 40-21 and you figure you're going to pack it in, but they kept coming after him and forced it, got within, I think, 40-35, and then forced that fumble that Tyler Johnson recovered. Eno takes it in 22 yards on the next play. And then, Arizona still has a chance to win the game before, I forget if it was wide left or I think it was wide right, but the missed field goal that clinched it for the Sun Devils. But I mean, there've been a lot, and I'm sure Brian feels the same way about a U of A game, but anytime the Sun Devils beat the Wildcats, it's special. But those two, just because of the way the games went, or in the 2010 game, the way it ended, probably ranked near the top of the list.
All right, Brian, make us happier. A couple minutes left. Give us a game that we can end this segment on a high note. And thank you both once again. It's been an honor.
Yeah, believe it or not, there's not, to me, like 1 or 2 that really stand out. I mean, anytime Arizona beats ASU, it's good. I almost go back to the Larry Smith decade there, where they either won or tied, and that kind of turned the whole rivalry around, because since then it's been, if my numbers are right, it's been pretty even since then. I mean, ASU has had the recent run, but if you go back really, I think, to when Larry Smith got things rolling there for a while, that it's been what a rivalry should be, and that is that both teams kind of share it. I know Arizona fans don't want me to say that, but again, I don't. There just isn't 1 or 2 games that stand out for me. I mean, anytime Arizona wins, I look at that's a big game. And when things got rolling back there under Smith, I think that's what got it started.
And if I could just interject real quickly, I lived in the state of Arizona for 8 years before I ever saw the Sun Devils beat the Wildcats in football. I moved here in 1983. In fact, I used to kid around that 3 great Arizonans moved to this state in 1983. Lute Olson, Mark Brand, the longtime sports information director at Arizona State, who just retired in July. And then a few steps behind them, yours truly. And I worked as a TV sports anchor in Phoenix for a long time, and moved here in 83. And I didn't see a Sun Devil win over the Wildcats until November of 1991, when Larry Marmee's team won 37-14. And then sadly, Larry lost his job 2 days later. So, but it took me a while to see. In fact, at some point I told somebody, I don't think I'm ever going to live long enough to see an ASU football win over U of A, but it did take a while, but I did see a few in my time.
Gentlemen, it's been an honor. I know we're running out of time, but thank you both once again. It truly has been great talking with you both.
If you're looking to add value to your sports cards, you've got to check out dtsportscards.com. They're an authorized dealer for PSA, which means you'll get great prices on your submissions if you go through them. And for just $2 a card, DT Sports Cards will take a close look at each card you submit and let you know whether it's worth grading. I just submitted some high-end hockey cards. They took a very close look, said they're good to go, and they all earned a PSA 10 grade, which tripled the value of each card. DT Sports Cards is located right here in Arizona. They provide quick, personalized service through email or direct messages. Find them online at dtsportscards.com and check them out on Instagram at DT_sportscards.
Want to thank Brian Jeffries and Tim Healey once again. It was kind of an awkward ending. We ran out of time on our video stream.
We're cheap. Yeah. We're cheapskates, and so we just do the free 40-minute Zoom. And as you were saying, thank you. Our 40 minutes was up, so we had a lot to talk about. We probably could have talked another couple hours, but we appreciate Tim and Brian taking the time to educate us and about both teams. I'm sure Wildcat fans know more than they ever cared to know about ASU football, and so if you see him on the field, you're like, "Hey, Tim mentioned that guy." Yeah, and again, like Tim Healey said, Valladay, ex-Valladay. Is a beast.
Really good,
and he's really going. If Arizona, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but if Arizona can find a way to contain him, they've got a decent shot.
I would agree with that, but it's good. Tim gave us a very good background of this rivalry. Now, from an ASU perspective, all right, we're not going to talk men's basketball. The Maui Invitational, if you're listening to this, might have already been played. We're recording this before the first game on Monday night. So next week we will dive into how the men did in Hawaii. Hopefully it's a good thing. But the women's team, Shane, had a little bit of a struggle on Sunday, but got through it. Ranked number 15, I believe, in the poll and hanging in there.
Yeah. And they struggled early against Long Beach State, but they ended up winning by 20. So it's all good. A lot of depth on this team. And that's without Paris Clark, who's in concussion protocol. So they get her back. And, like the men, they really haven't faced any tough competition yet. I'm interested to see how they do against better teams. But I think the women's team, I said it before, I'll say it again, I think they're going to be in the top 10 sooner rather than later.
All right, Shane, it's time for our weekly Wildcat Country game picks presented by DT Sports Cards. We want to thank them for sponsoring us, and we'll talk more about them in the coming weeks on the program. Last week, you gained a game on me. You are now 3 games over 500. I am 7 games over 500, but that's only a 2-game difference. If I have 63 wins, you have 61. Okay. For Arizona, you are 7-4 straight up, 6-5 against the spread. I am 6-5 straight up and 4-7 against the spread. So you are kicking my butt there. We have an 11 pack of games. We'll go quickly through the first 10, and then we'll break down the last one. So, okay, the Egg Bowl, Shane. Mississippi State, who we saw earlier this year, at Ole Miss, who is favored by 2.5. Who you got?
Whenever I think about that game now, I think about the game where Rich Rod was Ole Piss. Elijah Moore lifts his leg up, and Rich Rod thought that if that hadn't happened, they'd still be in Mississippi. But be that as it may, Mississippi got embarrassed last weekend. I think they come back and they got their heads up high for the rivalry game, and I think they beat Mississippi State. Rumor is Lane Kiffin going to resign on Friday and take the Auburn job. But I think he goes out a winner in his Ole Miss finale. So the Rebels, Mike Leach, no cowbells going on this time. I think Ole Miss gets the win. Could be some weird weather there too if the forecast holds up right. So we both agree there. Okay, UCLA is -10 at Cal on Friday. Do the Bruins bounce back, Shane, as a 10-point favorite? I think so. I think Cal's basking in the glory of rallying and beating Stanford. UCLA's got a chip on its shoulder after losing their last 2 games, and they're better than that. And so I think UCLA covers. I think so too. I just don't think much of Cal. I know, as you said, they got you kind of a lucky cover. They put on a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter there against Stanford last week, but I think UCLA wins this game by at least a couple of scores. DTR bounces back in his regular season finale. Florida at Florida State. Florida State is a 9.5-point favorite. I actually like the Gators to cover. I think this is a 1-score game either way. Seminoles probably win, but I like the Gators to cover. How about you? The battle of the former ASU assistants. Now I like Florida State that they played well. And you know what? One of the reasons why LSU is ranked as high as it is, because that doesn't look like as bad a loss as it did early in the season. So I'm going to go with Florida State. That'll be our first disagreement of the episode. I always say that Arizona ASU is the second most hated rivalry in college football behind Auburn and Alabama, the Iron Bowl. Alabama's a 21.5-point favorite. For once, they are not going to the SEC championship game to face Georgia. I'm going to take Auburn to cover. Cadillac Williams is a proud Auburn alum. I think he's going to have those guys playing hard. I don't think they win the game, but I think Auburn loses by, let's say, 17 or so. I think they cover that line. You? I think Auburn's just so depleted and demoralized. I don't think it matters. Sometimes you get up for this rivalry game, and other times you just kind of check out like ASU did in 2016. So I think Bama wins, and I think Bama covers.
Okay. Utah is a 29.5-point favorite at Colorado, coming off a close loss to Oregon. Help me here, Shane. I don't know what I'm going to do on this one.
Well, the last 3 games, Colorado's faced a huge, was like 30 points or so as an underdog. And every time I've picked against Colorado, and I've been right. So do I stop that streak now? No. Well, gosh, but Utah doesn't put up points in the kind of numbers that a lot of teams do. So they can, but I'm struggling on this one. You know what? I guess my better judgment, I'm going to do a combo breaker here, and I'm actually going to take Colorado barely with the points.
I think so too. I'm actually going to take Colorado as well. I think at home, the game we're in Utah, I would say the 29.5 isn't enough. Yeah. But I think Colorado is going to show some fight here in their final game of the season, and I think they lose by less than 24, let's say. Oregon is minus 3.5 at Oregon State in the rivalry formerly known as the Civil War. I think Oregon State wins the game outright, Shane. I've been a big Oregon guy lately. They disappointed me against Washington. Bo Nix did not look healthy at all. The Beavers have been really good at home this year, almost beat USC. Remember that? I think Oregon State finds a way to pull the upset here. Gosh,
that's a tough one. And, it's funny is Oregon still has a path to the college football playoff. They need a lot of other teams to lose. They need, TCU, if TCU loses, Clemson, who else? The Oregon would have to beat USC. So I like Oregon State a lot, but I think Oregon finds a way to cover in this one.
Okay, I am taking Oregon State straight up. I mean, I'll take the 3.5 points as well. I think it's a close game either way, but I like Oregon State to win. Okay, Washington is minus 2 at Washington State. Now, the Huskies have a path to make it to the Pac-12 championship game if Oregon loses. Shane, what do you think here? Washington minus 2 at Washington State in the Apple Cup.
I kind of like Washington State. I mean, both teams it's pretty evenly matched. It's in Pullman, is it not?
Yeah.
So I'm going to lean toward the Cougars. I mean, if Mike Leach were still the head coach, no way, because you couldn't beat Washington, but he's not. And it's in Pullman. Washington State, they consecutively eliminated ASU and Arizona from bowl contention in back-to-back weeks. There's a couple other games they probably should have won this year. Maybe Utah, maybe Oregon. So I think they find a way to beat Washington.
I was very impressed with the Cougars on Saturday. I think they win the game, and I don't need the 2 points. I'll take Washington State outright. Quick pick here, Shane. BYU minus 6.5 at Stanford. I'll just take BYU to cover, but I don't love it either way.
BYU to cover, and for whatever reason, David Shaw continues to not be on the hot seat, and I'm not sure why.
Because he's been a great coach lifetime. He just had bad teams for the last few years.
Yeah.
Notre Dame, who's been on fire, as good as any team in the country in the last month, let's say, is at USC. The Trojans are minus 5. I like Notre Dame to cover. I don't think they're going to win the game outright, but I see this as a field goal game once again. How about you?
I think USC finds a way to win and probably cover. I mean, it's close enough to where I think they probably win by a touchdown. Notre Dame, if this were a month ago, USC would win by 3 touchdowns, but Notre Dame's playing better. USC's at home. Remember, their only loss of the season was by 1 point in the final minute at Utah. So USC, I think, is a legitimate college football playoff contender. I think they find a way to win and cover at home.
Okay, my favorite rivalry in college football, Shane, Michigan and Ohio State, number 3 against number 2. I love it. I'll let you make the first pick. Ohio State is favored by 7.5.
It's kind of weird because I feel like there's still a lot we don't know about either of these teams because they haven't played a lot of great competition. I think Penn State is the best team that both have played. I mean, Ohio State played Notre Dame to begin the season, but Notre Dame wasn't as good. I'll take Ohio State just by virtue of the fact that they're at home. If nothing else, they have the better quarterback, and I think they'll probably find a way to cover as well.
Redemption factor from last year. Ohio State was the favorite and got blown out by Michigan, and Michigan went on to the college football playoff where they got obliterated by Georgia in the Orange Bowl. I think Ohio State bounces back, and I think Ohio State wins this game by a couple of touchdowns. I've been confident in this all year. Some of my friends think I'm crazy. I have friends on both sides of this rivalry that are passionate Michigan or passionate Ohio State fans. I like the Buckeyes big in this game. Call me crazy, especially now that Blake Corum, the star running back from Michigan, is definitely not going to be 100% if he plays. We're recording this on Monday, so too early to tell. All right, Shane, it is time for the biggest pick that we have made all season. The Territorial Cup in Arizona is favored, as you mentioned earlier in the show. They're a 3.5-point favorite at home against ASU. I will let you start first. Give me your rationale and make a pick.
I think the run game is going to be the deciding factor in this game, Eric. Arizona has the best passing game. They have two, or not, if not the three best receivers. They have the best quarterback. ASU has arguably the best tailback in the Pac-12 in X-Valladay, who is just a beast. And he's kind of like, I feel like he's kind of like their Kobe on the team post Shaq, but before Pau Gasol. If Kobe gets his 40, but it doesn't matter if his teammates don't do anything. If Valladay gets his, say, 150 yards total and a touchdown, that's probably not going to be enough for ASU to win. 250 to 300 and 3 touchdowns is a different story. So containing Valladay is going to be massive. I don't know if ASU is going to, or U of A is going to be able to contain him. But with that said, if this were a couple of weeks ago, I probably would pick ASU. I think Arizona's defense, the way they played the last couple of weeks, is a big difference, because Arizona's defense has gone from probably the worst in the Power 5 to an average, maybe slightly below average unit. That's huge. They're playing at home. I'm going to hedge a little bit just because the last several times I picked Arizona to win this game, I've gotten screwed. But I will reluctantly say Arizona, say something not to cover, so really close, say 30 to 29. How about that?
Okay, wow, 1 point game. Will it involve a blocked extra point, Shane?
I sure as hell hope not.
Okay, now it's time. I had mentioned earlier in the show that the 2004 game has kind of been standing out to me. Just have a feeling that this is Jedd Fisch's time to get over the hump and get the fan base excited for next season. We thought the UCLA, Washington State, potentially ASU trio might do it. Well, didn't go so well last week. Just a hunch. Arizona finds a way in the fourth quarter. Jayden de Laura plays one of his better games of the year. As Tim Healey said, the ASU defense has been a major disappointment. And as you pointed out earlier in the show, Shane, as you said, Jayden de Laura bounces back from a bad game with a good game. I think he throws for nearly 350 yards. Arizona wins this game 34-27.
Right.
Sometimes history has a way of repeating itself. I'll say it does it once again.
I'm going to mention one quick wild card, and that's Rayshon Speedy Luke. He's gotten a few touches in the last couple of weeks. He's just destined at some point to break us off a 70 to 80 yard run because he's just that explosive. It might not be until next year, but he's a wild card. Watch him. If he gets on the field, he gets a couple touches, he can make a difference in this game.
Shane and I will be there in the stands at Arizona Stadium, and we hope you will too. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Tim Healey and Brian Jeffries for joining us. Happy Thanksgiving, Shane, to you and your family. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, and especially this week, bear down.